There are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. These words by Lenin might be old, but they truly depicted Russia in the 20th century. In a matter of weeks, the Bolshevik Revolution faded away from the Tsarist Russian Empire in 1917. And yes, in a couple of weeks in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, which subsequently led to the demise of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. Russia crumbled like a house of cards 2 times in a century. And now, the war in Ukraine has strained an already weak Russian economy, undermined the legitimacy and strength of the regime, and exposed the Russian armed forces as a paper tiger. With recent counteroffensives in Kyiv and heterogeneous Kremlin society, analysts believe that at some point the entire Russian system could conceivably come crashing down, a scenario that has become thinkable even if its likelihood is still indeterminate. But what would happen if Russia collapsed once again? Watch the video until the end if you want to know which countries will fill this void and what would happen to the Russian nuclear weapons. If we delve back in history, we come to realize that this isn't the first time the Russians have used aggression as a defense against modernization, and by doing so, undermined its own territorial integrity. In 1904, when Russia was on the brink of a revolution, Nicholas II started a war with Japan. After facing defeat, Nicholas tried to pacify the revolutionaries by introducing reforms. And guess what? 12 years later, the revolutionaries brought the empire to a halt. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan to spread communism. As the empire was facing setbacks in the battle-hardened areas of Afghanistan, Mikhail Gorbachev liberalized national institutions. But rampant corruption, a staggering economy, and backlash by the people wreaked havoc. And 12 years after the Afghan invasion, the Soviets were brought to their knees once again. 12 is an unlucky number for the Russians, that's for sure. But the Soviet Union collapsed into 15 republics, this time due to the ethnic fault lines. And to prevent further disintegration, the then Russian President Boris Yeltsin came up with the idea of a federation, promising each region a considerable amount of autonomy. While this setup has worked wonders for Moscow, recent geopolitical shifts have turned the tables. But let me simplify that a bit. According to Mikhail Yampolsky, professor of contemplative literature and Russian and Slavic studies at the New York University, Russia at present resembles a khanate in which local princes receive a license to rule from the chief khan in the Kremlin. For the past decade, the main job of the Moscow-appointed governors has been to provide votes for Mr. Putin. In exchange, they receive a share of oil revenues and the right to rule as they see fit. But this situation doesn't work well, especially if Moscow runs out of money amid the devastating war in Ukraine. See our video on the economic turmoil faced by Russia for a better understanding of that. Nevertheless, in case of a shortage of money, Russia would fail to feed its ethnic regions. And in return, Putin might hear dissenting voices. In fact, Juraj Mesik, a Slovak expert, has argued that if Mr. Putin goes and the money runs out, Chechnya would be the first to break off. Once it collapses, territories like Crimea and Donbass will return to Ukraine, Abkhazia and Southern Ossetia to Georgia, and Transnistria to Moldova. This is terrifying to say the least. While the world rightly worries about the prospect of a greater Russia, but a lesser Russia could be just as troubling. It could trigger geopolitical rivalries that could haunt every country in the world. Europe could become a hotbed for proxy wars, power contestation, and much more. Suppose Russian secessionist movements came into force once again and the Kremlin loses all control. What would be the worst-case scenario? Well, the power void left by the Russians would trigger geostrategic competition. Rival neighbours would try to seek regional hegemony. The first one to flex its muscles would be Poland. With the help of NATO's resources, the Eastern European country would try to push its influence into Belarus and Ukraine. At the same time, Turkey, once called the sick man of Europe, would try to gain its influence in the Black Sea. In this pursuit of dominance, Turkey and Poland could ally with each other. Other possibilities are likely to emerge. You've seen that Ukraine has denied Russia to capture its territory. In fact, Kyiv started a counter-offensive in the Donbass region, and mostly with success. This means that Ukraine can stamp out Russian-backed separatists and even get back Crimea. But one thing's for sure. If Russia collapses, territorial disputes and military might would become the order of the day. In the south, Iran would be ready to gain supremacy in the Caspian Sea. This would be done to check Turkish expansionism. There's already a conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia in Central Asia, where Ankara supports Azerbaijan and Iran backs Armenia. So this Cold War mentality of allies would emanate from Russia and spread across these Central Asian republics. There's also an elephant in the room: China. And it wouldn't like rival countries to be wandering around Russian territory. There's a chance that China might turn Mongolia into a client state in the east and expand its influence into Central Asia. Beijing has been spearheading its multi-billion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative. It would try to invest heavily in the former Soviet Union republics. So, no permanent enemies or permanent friends. Only interests are permanent in this anarchic world. Up north, Canada, Denmark, and the US would consolidate control over the shipping lanes in the Arctic Circle. Any Russian military presence in the area would be thwarted, leading to the demise of Russian power. But wait, you might be thinking, what would happen to Russia's nuclear stockpile if the Kremlin collapses? Well, this is alarming and demands careful consideration. At present, Russia has around 6,000 nuclear warheads, and they're spread across the country. If Russia's chain of command splinters, it would be nearly impossible for a single body to clear the mess. Possibly, non-state actors and rogue elements might try to gain access to the weapons of mass destruction or fissile materials. In that case, the International Atomic Energy Commission, the current nuclear watchdog, would need a large-scale team to mobilize in Russia to secure all the nuclear weapons. They might also need the help of local power brokers to give them the intel about the weapons. World powers might also want to plant governments over whatever remained of Russia. In that case, the US and China would end up in proxy wars in Russia. Both would want to obtain influence in the region. In the 20th century, many believed the biggest danger to global stability was the idea of a united Great Russia. But now, in the 21st century, the biggest threat could be a weak and fragmented Russia. So what do you guys think? What do you think would happen if Russia crumbles once again? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to watch our previous video about why the Russian economy is about to implode. And don't forget to click that subscribe button. I make videos like this every week where I uncover the secrets of money and business.